In today's ASMR Kickstarter showcase video, I am going to showcase the Folkloric Waters Tarot. Now, I think a lot of people might already know about this deck. I have heard a lot about her other decks, but I don't have any of them, and so I'm actually really curious about this deck. It looks, I think I might, if I have the funds, back it because it looks really cool. I also like water themed and also blue. And like I said, I haven't watched like thoroughly about her other decks, but I have seen a lot of people who use them and I know like them. So, where there's smoke, there's often fire. Like I do believe sometimes there's a bandwagon because it's worth getting in that wagon. All right, so if you've seen my other Kickstarter showcase videos, you know that this is an ASMR channel as much as it is tarot and oracle. So I'm going to read through the page. If all you're interested in is the Kickstarter, though, the link is in the description, so you could just skip my video, just go straight there. If you've never used Kickstarter before, I'll just go over a couple quick things. Down here where it says Astoria, Oregon, it tells you where it's coming from. So especially in the current world order, obviously like tariffs and shipping and everything is insane. So it can be useful to know where it's coming from, depending on where you are in the world. So for example, for those of us in the United States, it's probably easier to back a lot of United States decks because we don't have to wonder how things are going to ship from other places. Another thing to know is this was just launched, I think, today or yesterday, and it's already almost reached its goal, which means once it reaches its goal, it'll get made. I mean, technically an artist could not, but that almost never happens. I don't think it's ever happened to me yet, and I've backed a good number of decks. I don't even know exactly how many. It's embarrassing. Never mind, it's not embarrassing. I like every deck I have backed, but I realize not everybody has the funds, so it's not really embarrassing as much as I feel bad. I wish we could all have all the decks we wish we had. And so if you're interested in backing this project, you can click the little back this project here. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start reading through. And if I have any little asides, I'll make my little rambly asides. But it says Folkloric Waters Tarot, rurally curated antique art deck to dive into the waters inspired by Finnish and Northern European folklore and folkloric forest reprint. Oh, so that was one of the other decks, the Folkloric Forest. So this, what she's saying here is that this Kickstarter is both for the Folkloric Waters Tarot and the reprint of the Folkloric Forest, which I believe is currently sold out. Over here you can see the creator, and she's created 5 decks. I point that out because especially if you're new to Kickstarter, sometimes it's nice to start with someone who has done this before. You can even go to their other pages and see, were people happy, were people not happy, and that can help you feel more or less confident. So I'm usually pretty confident if the creator has successfully done a number of campaigns, or at least one other. Though there's plenty of people I've backed who've never done one before, then have done a wonderful job. All right, so an introduction. The Folkloric Waters Tarot is one of 5 decks that embrace the elements, natural surroundings, and folklore. It highlights the highs and lows of nature, living with the land, and respecting the unknowns of the deep water. This campaign is a follow-up to Folkloric Forest Tarot, which successfully funded last year. Folkloric Forest was a deck I created for personal use that you can read more about further into this campaign. The reprinting of that deck is a part of this campaign's goal. My daily life exists among the tree line meeting the mighty river's edge and nestled into the Pacific Ocean's jetty, creating unforgiving rural encounters. The cycle of life is always present, whether that's a life taken too soon from a sneaker wave at the beach or finding relaxation fishing for salmon under the piers in the Columbia River. For business or hobby, agriculture and outdoor industry is a large part of the lifestyle. These factors also heavily inspired the curation of these cards. And there's a picture of the devil and the star. Really like this star card. Looking up with the trees along the edges and the stars in the middle. Someday I'd really like to visit the Pacific Northwest. My husband and I have been married for almost 6 years. Is that right? And we never went on a honeymoon. Because obviously 6 years ago, when was that? COVID. And we've thought about if we did, because of the current world climate, we, and financially, doing it in the U.S. would be great. So Pacific Northwest has been on our mind as maybe something we could do maybe in the next year or two if we can find a way to do it. So those are really random aside, but the point was I really like the Pacific Northwest has a mystique. I feel like, there's a number of places in the U.S. that have mystique to it, and the Pacific Northwest is one. So that attracts me to this deck as well. It says, you will find that the cohesion of artwork brings an energy and readability to the cards that can fit into a personal narrative quickly. The beauty of this curation is the ability to adapt and mold with you. The water-related environments have many commonalities throughout various myths, lore, and life. And the great thing is, it doesn't have to be about that either. That's just where I've placed it for myself. If you're a lover of nature, intrigued by the harshness and mystery of the dark waters, or a fan of the unforgiving honesty of survival amongst the land, then you may enjoy this deck. Yes, 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 and yes. I love nature. I am intrigued by the harshness and mystery of the dark waters. I'm originally from a different enormous body of water. And the ocean does have its own, and even the Great Lakes and stuff too. Actually, any of them. Where I live now is with all the big rivers, and they also have a power to them. So anyway, how it started. My interest in Finnish mythology sparked this idea for a set of decks, like a mini encyclopedia set, embracing the myths and lore as a part of my ancestry research. You'd be surprised to learn how little out it's there in terms of English resources compared to other pantheons like Egyptian, Greek, Norse, and so on. I've slowly been building a library of books and other materials related to the, I'm going to mispronounce this thing, Kalevala, and other Finnish tales and traditions. That's really cool. I like that she's taken something she's really interested in and sort of woven that, like done research, and also it seems like it's woven all kinds of different things together. I like decks. I like a lot of decks for a lot of different reasons, but one type of deck I like is that where there's like all these different layers. Like maybe you just approach it, you just like the pictures, maybe you like the meanings, but maybe if that person, knows a lot about, fairy tales or, like plants or animals or whatever, you end up also like learning all of this other stuff in addition to the introspection, or if you do divinate, it just adds a whole nother layer to the cards. It's like a good book, like good classic books where you can read them on all different levels. Anyway, just another aside. It says, I also had been searching for a layer of depth focused on world building and folklore in my readings, something that didn't require being the star of the show, but is a team player that enhances the cards around it. So it sounds like maybe something that'd be good for folks who do a lot of pairing. It says the itch finally started to kick in for a deck relating to this interest of mine. Because I'm a creative and determined individual and a Capricorn sun, the idea of using antique paintings to represent Finnish folklore seemed like such a great way to find what I was looking for. And so the journey began for a personal Finnish folkloric deck. That says the creative process. Similar to my collage work, I began collecting hundreds of paintings from the public domain. I save all these to a folder on my desktop so I don't have to stop and think if something will be a perfect fit. I clicked through hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of pages of antique artwork. I like that. I did something similar with my, I created a deck. I don't have it up for sale on Make Playing Cards, but I made it on Make Playing Cards. It's called the Rewilding Missouri Oracle, and I did it with my own photographs. But I did the same thing where like I went through all of my photos and I had a folder and I grabbed the ones that spurred a thought, like a keyword or a phrase just sort of jumped to mind, or I thought they were an interesting image or an interesting phenomenon. But I didn't think a whole lot of, I didn't spend like, oh, is it this picture or that picture? I was like, it's the minute if it sparked something, I put it in that folder and then came back later to, make decisions. So I don't know. I think that's kind of like what she's talking about, where it's sort of like, grab them and you can kind of filter through them later. So here she has a picture of the Folkloric Waters and the Folkloric Forest, the card backs. And it says many of these art pieces spoke instantly to me, calling out the tarot card to which they belonged. Yeah, it sounds a very similar kind of process. The creative process was so frank and energetic that I quickly became fixated on completing the first deck, Folkloric Forest Tarot. With the world I built in that deck, I could see the vision of this new world I was curating in this deck, hunting, foraging, and farming amongst the brutal honesty of the sea, surviving challenging encounters of life and death. There's nothing held back while living amongst nature. That's very true. And as far as I can understand it, especially in the Western, I'm just starting with the US. Not only does like the Pacific Northwest have a mystique, but the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific Northwest, like that whole part of the country, doesn't just have a mystique, it also has a lot more harshness than like, let's say like I live in Missouri and I love it. Like the nature around here is amazing. It's like a hidden gem. The Ozarks are fantastic. There's caves everywhere. Like that's why I made an oracle deck about it, because I just think it's effing fantastic. And we do have bears, and there's been a few confirmed mountain lion sightings, but we're not, and the rivers could be dangerous, but it's not, and nature's always, we think of it as like la-di-da, but it can always be dangerous. But like ticks are horrible around here. But it's my understanding. And I've backpacked in the Rockies before, but like Glacier, but that side of the country is much more like wild to the point of, you can't just kind of be a fool and just wander around for no reason. What am I trying to say? I guess I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not sure if this is what she's getting at, but if she is, it's sort of like, it's a lot. Nature always deserves a respect, but out there it seems like it deserves especially kind of respect in terms of like, you respect the power. You're like, okay, you are way bigger than me. You could murder me in a million different ways. I will be respectful of you know, the vastness and amazingness of everything. I'm just babbling a lot in this video, but that's okay. Just click out of here if you don't like it. During the creation of Folkloric Forest, my original intention of representing strictly Finnish tales and traditions shifted. I was bumping into areas where I couldn't find the right painting to represent the character or lore and the tarot card. Then I began to overly analyze every decision I made previously for the completed cards. At that point, I realized that I needed to widen my scope. It didn't have to be ultra specific and detailed to strictly Finnish mythology and folklore. I can keep those connections for myself. There are many influences of it in the deck, but it was okay for the deck to become something more far-reaching in my ancestral region. And then it has selected cards from Folkloric Waters. It has the Ten of Air and the Ace of Water. The Ace of Water is a special card to me. I'm assuming it's a cup, so, oh yeah, there's actually a picture of a cup. I'm done. It says, there are many crossovers among Northern European folklore, so opening the perspective from strictly Finnish to a broader region couldn't hurt. With this adjustment in mindset, I quickly continued searching and placing paintings on the cards. Much was from intuition and some were from research. Once I selected a painting, I used Photoshop to retouch and edit it. Sometimes I'd move an entire figure over to create a better composition. Sometimes I would remove one of the painting's subject matter or other elements to create a better focus. Sometimes I just removed flaws or made color adjustments. Every single piece has been digitally modified by me to make for the best fit and story of the cards. Although Folkloric Forest quickly formed within a week or so, this almost year-long creation process took on a much slower, less feral energy. Crafting a world for the water element proved more challenging than the earth element. I naturally gravitate toward and lean into the earth element, so approaching the water element forced me to reflect on the decisions I was making as I curated and placed the artwork. To learn to lean into the emotional, the relationships, and the human living environments, I had to look within myself, areas that I keep floating away in the darkness for few to see. I hope you can see and feel the different yet familiar worlds between these two decks. I actively try to keep the same cards from each deck focused on a different, nuanced concept or angle without repeating the same message or artwork style. There's some natural overlap, but as with everything I produce, I did the best I could with what I had. Sounds good to me. The 5 deck set. The additional decks are for future creation and will not be offered in this campaign. It says, I developed the set's concept based on the world in the Kalevala. Again, I think I'm mispronouncing that. Each region aligned so well that the elements, I decided to use that as a starting point for each deck's theme. Forest, earth, underwater, water, village, fire, mountains, air, underworld, shadow. So the next ones would be village, skies, and depths. Also, an exciting perk to the set is the potential to create a personalized deck by mixing and matching the cards, forming your perfect curation. That's really neat. I like that. It's a really neat idea. Yeah, you might even want to do like, you know, your cups only be from waters and your earth only be from, you know, I guess that's a simple way, but that's really neat. I like that idea. The cards. It actually makes me think of some other decks I have that are multi, like the Terra Arcanae and Ignis Arcanae, like that whole set. Doing something like that with those two, or if there's certain cards from different ones, or just taking them strictly like Ocean Arcanaes, the cups, you know, like things like that. Anyway, so let's see. I'm real bad with knowing what anything means in terms of like GSM, stuff like that. So I'm not going to read through all that. That's something because that's something more like if you're really just interested in the deck specifications, you can go to Kickstarter and read that. It does say the cards are inspired by the Rider-Waite-Smith system, with name changes to some majors and suit titles. The cards take on a nuanced direction inspired by the folklore without being a standard RWS interpretation. The minors feature the suit emblem at the top instead of Roman numerals like the majors. The High Priestess is not the source, the Empress, the vessel, the Emperor, the pillar, the Hierophant, the order, the Wheel of Fortune, the wheel, the Hanged Man, the submerged. I like that, the submerged. Wands, fire, cups, water, swords, air, earth, pentacles. And there's a link to look at the Folkloric Forest cards. And then she has, looks like all of the cards. So if you want, or if not all of them, then most of, no, it looks like all of them. So that's really nice. It's nice when you can really see, like, what am I getting? So you can see, like, is that really a deck I'm interested in? And it'll come in a box. And I believe, yeah, it's a tuck box. I'm not a big tuck box person, only because I end up destroying them. Not on purpose, obviously. But I have these little hands that just are not good at opening things. So things inevitably get torn. So I'm always kind of bummed when it comes in a tuck box. I understand there's, aesthetic reasons, and also, like, you can keep things cheaper, or sell them cheap, for less if they're in a tuck box, so it makes them more accessible in that way. And I'm sure there's other reasons, but, like I said, aesthetics, preference, whatever. So there is a guidebook. It says, please note that the guidebook is for guidance with the artwork, not as a resource for learning specific folklore. I'm providing nuance to the card, but am by no means an expert or teacher on the subject matter. It contains snippets about tarot, animals, and general Finnish and Northern European folklore meanings. However, each card's artwork is open to interpretation and applicable to your practice, traditions, and meanings. Just because I started it in this place of Finnish mythology doesn't mean that's where you have to keep it. Each painting is credited, which is super cool. One, it's just cool to credit your sources. I'm a big fan of that. Both for credit to, like, the creator, even the creator's long dead, but also for those of us who might be like, oh, that's a really cool painting, I want to know more about it. The painting, the painter, and things like that. It's really neat. That's really cool that she does that. It says the title and date of each painting and the artist's name, birthplace, and lifespan. Oh, that's so cool. Are included in each card's guidebook entry. That is super cool. Okay, so she has two examples, the pillar and the vessel. And so you can actually see the pillar. It says influence, not the picture, but we could scroll up if we wanted, but I'm not. It says influence, responsibility, stewardship. Seated on a stone as if a throne at the edge of the water, and then there's a name that I cannot pronounce, holds authority through age, knowledge, and memory, a principle that arises after creation when what has been made must now be maintained. With also something in hand, the world is not conquered. Instead, it's held, ordered, and sustained through endurance and long-term thinking. The pillar establishes boundaries as an archival presence, a reminder of what may be carried forward, what must be preserved, and how existence avoids dissolving into chaos. Waiting, listening, and responding only when necessary becomes a form of control. And then again, the name says is the ancient rune singer of the Kalevala, carries power through spoken word, chants, and songs. This functional magic creates binds, curses, and restores balance to reality and forms language as law. Very cool. Okay, next steps. She said the card completed, the box is completed, the guidebook is still in progress. And the Folkloric Forest Tarot is also having some adjustments. And then she goes into more details about just like the shipping and things like that. So again, if you're interested in the deck, I'm not going to read through all that. And she has links to her page, her homepage, her YouTube, her Instagram. I've just recently been watching her YouTube videos. She has some really cool ones out there right now. And yeah. So if you want to check this out, I'll put the link in the description. I'm stopping suddenly because I think someone's about to knock on the door. And I do screen recordings, and I don't want to re-record this whole thing. So we're going to do an abrupt stop. It's the Folkloric Waters Tarot and the Folkloric Forest reprint, and the link will be in the description. Thank you for coming today, and I hope to see you again soon.